Out of the Ordinary Insights, brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
I'm speaking to Phuti Mahanyele, the CEO of Shanduka Group. Phuti, you mentioned just before the break that you don't tolerate mediocrity within the Shanduka fold. How does balance fall into that tenet?
Yeah.
We've had this discussion off air before, and I'm interested that you share this with our viewers.
Yeah, I think it's something that we all strive towards, and
But it's a myth.
I would love to meet someone who can say that they have that, and I'm sure there are people who do much better. I haven't been very good at it, and I think the problem is that I'm surrounded by people who are not very good at it either. But having said that, I certainly do make the effort to make sure that I'm spending quality time with family, friends, and and all of that. But
has it ever been an internal battle, and if so, how have you dealt with it?
Yeah.
Because I think every person who is running an organization must at some stage realize that things are out of kilter.
Yeah. I mean, it is something that I'm always conscious of. I guess part of the difficulty in italics is that I actually love what I do,
So it's not really work.
So so what might appear to someone else as hard, if I'm talking to a family member and it's late or it's a weekend and I'm in the office, and to them it seems like, oh gosh, for me it doesn't feel like hard. It doesn't feel hard, or because I enjoy my work. It's very fulfilling, and I'm very lucky to be able to work with people that I like working with,
which makes perfect sense.
It makes a huge difference, So I mean, we have.
Then let's rephrase the question.
Yeah.
For others, how do you allow them balance within your culture?
That's
because
are
you forgiving of that balance?
Yeah, I am. I was talking to a colleague just the other day who was saying that he's concerned that that he's not contributing as much to his family in terms of just being there and time and all of that, and he wants to be able to leave, early on some days and all of that.
But does that affect the way you look at him in terms of his career here?
Well, no. I think what I've seen in the past, we've had a situation where someone actually resigned, and it was someone that we really would not have wanted to lose. And had he spoken to us earlier, we perhaps could have been able to agree to something that would have hopefully been workable for him and us. So having learned from some of those those experiences, I certainly I'm very appreciative when someone brings up an issue early enough so that we can address it, and rather avoid a situation where someone makes a drastic decision when it's something that can be easily resolved. When the reality is that even if someone's not in the office, and they're at home, and they're available on the phone or an email, at least you've still got access to them, And
it's the age of technology.
Absolutely, and thank goodness for that,
Another issue that we need to address is women in leadership positions.
Right.
Now, and I like to put the context out there in that I've been interviewing captains of industry on this particular show on a weekly basis for some 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think I can count on one hand the number of times that there have been women sitting in the hot seat. Why is the South African landscape not changing?
Yeah, it's difficult because I think it's a number of issues. One is that corporate environments are not sufficiently open to diversity from a gender perspective. Because the reality is that we have a government that has pushed for legislation, and that itself, I think, has been very much been leading, and they're not just saying that we must have the empowerment of women, but they're actually doing it, because when you look at public sector organizations, you look at governments, you see that
there's much stronger representation.
Absolutely. The problem is with private sector organizations. It's the private sector that is not open to, having women, on their boards or in senior, or executive, capacities. And the fact that we still have listed organizations, that continue to be able to operate, notwithstanding the fact that there's no diversity in terms of race or gender or, and so...
What is it going to take to
Yeah.
shift the mindset and
Yeah.
to see strong female representation in the private sector in South Africa? Is it going to happen in our lifetime?
I would like to think that it will,
But is it going to take a movement?
Yeah.
Do we have to stand up and
Yeah.
start picketing outside some of these listed?
My view is that, this is seen and communicated as if it's a social issue, something that companies will do because they have to, they're almost complying. And the reality is that it is something that is so imperative from an economical perspective, because we need to have women involved in the economy and in business and to be leading organizations. What for me doesn't make sense is the fact that from tertiary institutions, you have a significant pool of women that are coming out of those and qualifying.
Highly qualified.
Absolutely, and yet not coming into the senior positions. They end up at middle management, and that's it. And I guess there's some pull factors as well, as well as push factors, because the pull factors are the fact that yes, we also have family responsibilities and all of that, and society does still have an expectation for the woman to be the one that is playing more of a nurturing role.
But we are seeing a conscious shift. We're seeing more
100%.
men
Yes.
involved at home
Absolutely.
and in the family.
Yes, and that's very true. And so that's why I say it's a combination. It's also organizations not being willing to accommodate, or have, more women and more diversity in their organizations.
Do you celebrate women within the fold here at Shanduka?
Absolutely. I think right now we have over 60% representation of women in our organization. And in the provision, at the executive level, we also have quite a strong representation. We could still do more, but we're always pushing. I mean, we always definitely, it's top of mind for us.
I have to ask this question in
Yeah.
Captains of Industry. How do you define your leadership style? Is it easy to define?
I think so. I would say that it is, it's empowering. I think I create an enabling, environment, because I like to surround myself with people who are smart, who are capable.
It's a secret to success, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I find that actually makes for, just a really productive place to be in when you're surrounded by people who are very capable.
Have you made mistakes in the hiring process before?
Absolutely.
And how do you retrace your steps? I think a number of people want to know this.
You have to face that issue as soon as possible. I've certainly made mistakes, because sometimes we take risks, with people, because certainly you'll be able to see a person's capability on paper, but what you don't know is the character and all of those issues. And so I've made mistakes in the past, but what I've done is to immediately address those. I'm not the type of person that can linger on a problem. I need it to be addressed immediately so that we can move on and deal with the next issue.
While we're on the subject of mistakes, other
Yeah.
mistakes that you've made along the way that you have recovered from? Obviously you have, because you've got an excellent corporate career under your belt.
Sure.
How do you deal with mistakes in general?
I think what's worked for me is that I tend to want to find a solution to a problem, I'm not very good at continuing to say that, oh, there's this issue, I like to address issues. I'm very much an action person.
Have you ever had to say you're sorry? Have you ever had to say you're sorry?
Many times, and I think also just as just in the process of developing, as a leader, there's one has had to learn different ways of interacting with people, and so absolutely I've had to say so. I still say I'm sorry.
It's the best way to get out of trouble.
Yeah.
Let's look at
Yeah.
what you want to do now.
Yeah.
You've been at the helm of the Shanduka Group from 2010 as CEO.
Yes.
Where do you see Phuti Mahanyele going down the line? Are we going
Yeah.
to see a political career unfolding, or are you staying firmly in the private sector space?
Yeah, no, I'm staying firmly in the private sector space. I hope I can continue to be in business for as long as I possibly can. And, you know, I love what we do here. You know, when I look at where we are right now, Shanduka is, you know, we're working on what I see as transformative transactions, in that, you know, commercially, these are transactions that are not only value accretive for Shanduka, but also, you know, for the various stakeholders that we have in our communities as well. So, you know, I love working here, you know, because it's not just about growing shareholder value, but it is also about making a difference in our community.
So is your legacy joined to that of what the Shanduka Group is
Yes.
ultimately going to be?
Yeah, absolutely.
And where do you see the group rising? On the continent, globally? Have you got aspirations globally?
Right now, we're very much focused on the African continent. I think there's, you know,
More than enough opportunity.
Absolutely. You know, there's significant amount of opportunities on the African continent. At the right time, you know, we're a dynamic organization. We could decide, you know, to, in the next 5 years, perhaps to be outside of the African continent. But for now, I think we have enough opportunities on the African continent, and we'd like to focus there.
You touched earlier on the resource bias that
Yeah.
you've got. You're obviously talking more about a diversified portfolio. I said
Sure.
now about 39%
Yes.
resource focused.
Right.
When you see news flow,
Right.
such as we've seen of late,
Yeah.
and gold falls $100 in,
Yeah.
in one day, and
Yeah.
platinum is down $50 in
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
How do you absorb that news flow?
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
a sense of, I mean, the market commentators of the world
Sure.
are saying right now, you know, are we poised for
Yeah.
an enormous crash that's fundamentally going to impact your business, or do
Yeah.
you just work through that noise?
Yeah.
You ignore it?
You know, Bronwyn, when you look at the last few years, in fact, even when you look at over the last decade, we've seen such changes, I mean, of seismic proportions that, you know, I think...
You can't run your business on external news flow.
Absolutely, you know, and fortunately, you know, not being, you know, in a short-term investor, we're able to take a bit of a longer-term perspective, and we have the, you know, in-house research around what the long-term you know, view is around those commodities and, you know, other sectors as well. So, you know, it's about having that view around, and unfortunately also, I mean, even if we look at, let's say, platinum, you know that it is a commodity that has got, you know, multiple uses. And so, yes, you know, whilst it may be under pressure at the moment, you know that cannot stay the same, you know, if the economy is to change, you know. So
It's
we
cyclical.
have... Absolutely. So we have a longer term view, and I think that certainly works in our stead. And we do a lot of our homework when we invest in the sectors also.
Phuti, thanks so much for your time.
Thank
I've
you.
been chatting to Phuti Mahanyele, the CEO of Shanduka Group.